All right, so today is about Freud and his take on the personality. Now, a couple things to put Freud within the kind of larger context is Freud was the first. There it is. Freud was the first psychologist to try to come up with an overarching theory of personality. So there's that. Um, Second thing, and you kind of got a taste of this when we were looking at Freud's psychosexual stages, um, is he's very controversial in how he tries to describe things and talk about what's going on within the human psyche. And on top of that, there's a lot of psychologists who don't like him. They don't like his ideas. They don't like him personally. He has been called a lot of different things over the years. He's been called a fraud. He's been called a charlatan. He's been called a sexist. He's been called a bigot. He's been called a lot of different things. Um, but the thing is, with Freud, is yes, he was crazy. But sometimes, and this is kind of my little take on him, sometimes you need a little crazy to get things started. Um, and he is going to really influence a lot of the psychoanalysts who come after him. Like, for example, next week, on Monday, we're going to look at Carl Jung, who is pretty much the Uber Freud. Um, and really, kind of the story between Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung is that is actually a story of the master becoming the student. And what happens is Freud gets psychoanalysis started, and then Carl Jung is going to come along as a student of Freud. And then eventually Jung is going to surpass Freud. Like, he's going to take Freud's ideas and build off of them. So that's kind of, I think, where you really need to look at Freud. Freud is a starting point on something that a lot of people have not really gone into before. Okay, so that's really where to start. Now, a little bit of his history. He worked a lot with the sick, mentally sick, um, those types of people. He worked with women who were suffering from a disease. Back then, they called hysteria. Today, we would call this more akin to anxiety. And then after that, this was like when World War One was over. He worked with a lot of returning soldiers who were dealing with what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, Freud was one of the people who kind of made post-traumatic stress disorder a thing. And then he later traveled to England to escape from the Nazis. So he witnessed the rise of Nazism. He was from Austria. And so there's a lot of, so when it really comes to Freud and kind of the world that he came to be in a time where the world was straight up screwed. That's really the best way to put it. So he saw a lot of jacked up stuff, and I think part of that um, kind of influenced him. And a little bit of another little trivia if you want to be on Jeopardy. The first book he ever written was called Uber Coca, which rough Mr. Day translation means the joys and wonders of doing cocaine. He advocated the use of cocaine as a medical drug. He was addicted from it, but he was addicted to cocaine for a while. He said it helped him think. Smoked cigars all the time. It was Freud is an interesting guy as a person and all the other stuff. So back to the iceberg. We touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the consciousness, the stages of consciousness. You got your unconscious, your preconscious, your unconscious. Freud is the guy that created the iceberg that most psychologists kind of piggyback off of today. But his iceberg is actually broken up into three parts. There's three different parts to this iceberg, and that's really the thing we're going to look at today. So, bit of a recap. Our consciousness is our conscious mind, what we think, feel, etc., all those things. And then our unconscious are the things we know that we don't know are there. So like a repressed memory or something like that. So you got three different pieces of parts. You got your id, your ego, your superego. If you've ever seen a cartoon involving shoulder angels or shoulder devils, congratulations, that's Freud. Um, your id is usually personified in the cartoons as the shoulder devil. This is your instincts, your desires, your drives. Your superego, on the other extreme, is your sense of morality, your sense of right and wrong. And excuse me. And then your ego is you stuck in the middle between what you want to do and what you feel like is right and wrong. So, so the id, according to Freud, is the container of all the instinctual and biological urges. And the id exists to meet our needs: food, rest, sex, all that stuff. And what it does is the id lives off the pleasure principle. And if you've ever seen the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street, the Cookie Monster is pure id. Um, he's all id. He's got a desire. He goes off to meet it. That's why Robot Chicken made a video where the Cookie Monster attacked the Keebler elves until the Keebler elves had to pretty much shove cookies down the Cookie Monster's throat until the Cookie Monster died. This is what would happen if we were all id. If we were all id, we would just satiate all of our desires until we would die. Like we would eat until our stomach would burst or all those types of things. So that's the id. So the id meets our needs, but it's kind of a wild man and it needs something to hold it in check. And that's what the superego does. The superego is our sense of right and wrong, and it wants to follow the rules of society. And this is concerned with the moral principle. This is why you could be watching TV and you see a commercial and maybe it involves sad puppies and for ASPCA or something, and you're watching that and you feel a little bad for a second. You feel like maybe you should join, or what you could do this: take your pencil, take just a regular wooden pencil, and give it a name. Call it Tim, and talk to it like you would a regular person for a whole day. I'm serious. Talk to it like you would a regular person. Call it Tim, call it Wilson, call it whatever. And then right before you go to bed, snap it in half. Part of you is not going to want to snap it in half. And that's partially your superego, because your superego controls, again, that sense of right and wrong. It lives by morality. It lives by right and wrong. And one of the things that we can do as people is we can actually attribute moral decisions to even inanimate objects. And your ego is the part of you that's caught in the middle. This lives by the reality principle. This is our rational mind. And really what the ego has to do is meet the needs of the id without offending the superego. Because again, if both are left unchecked, both will kill you. Because, like, for example, like what I said, if your id is left to run roughshod, you will just meet your desires until you explode. If you live totally just by morality, you would give away all of your food to all the starving children in Africa, leaving nothing for yourself until eventually you die. And there's a video link. The link's in the PowerPoint, but I also put it in the It's in Schoology, where it kind of shows like how they're supposed to work, because whatever we do in life, it's a negotiation between these two. So you have your id talking to you in one ear, what you want to do, and then you have your super ego in the other ear. What you have to do is find a way to kind of keep both sides happy. And The Emperor's New Groove actually does a pretty decent job of showing that. So make sure you kind of watch that clip, because it shows the negotiation that to a certain extent we all do, um, at one point or another, at least, a couple times a day. Because, like, even like you guys today, um, think about it. Do you really want to come to school online, or would you rather stay in bed? So you probably made some kind of negotiation. Like, oh, I'll stay in bed 15 more minutes. It's enough to keep your id happy with, hey, I got more sleep or I got more rest. But at the same time, your super ego is not offended with yourself, um, because you actually got out of bed and went to class and did what you needed to do. Now, again, Freud stages is kind of a throwback to that, the psychosexual stages. He was the first to claim that childhood shaped a person's personality. This is usually done within the first 5 years of life, and this is kind of where these two ideas kind of meet. What happens is at each of those stages, the child faces an internal conflict between the id and the superego. And what the child has to do at each of those stages, at each of those different stages, the oral stage, the anal stage, whatever, the child faces some kind of conflict. How the child negotiates the conflict between the id and the superego. So, like, for example, the anal stage. Child is learning to test the limits of their boundaries. The id wants to explore. The id wants to figure out what is going on. The id wants to do what the id wants to do. The superego, on the other hand, wants to follow the rules, do what mommy and daddy say, make sure mommy and daddy are happy with them. So a child has these two little voices going on in their minds. Do what you want to do what mommy and daddy say. And both sides have to be kept happy. And how that conflict will play out will be the thing that shapes who the child is, how they will act in public, how they will think about things, how they will interact with the world. Okay? And this is, again, kind of a throwback to the psychosexual stages. So, again, you got your oral stage, the first 18 months. Do I want to eat all the time? Do I get fed immediately when I cry? The id, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. Super ego, don't make mommy and daddy mad. Don't cry too much. Anal stage, I want to explore. I want to understand what's going on. I maybe want to break things. Don't make mommy and daddy mad. Phallic stage, you understand girls are different. They're not, or, if you're a boy or a girl, you understand that the other gender is different than you. Boys realize there's something different about girls. Girls realize there's something different about boys. What do you do? I'm supposed to play nice with the other children. Your more sense of morality. Your id, they're different. Maybe I should make fun of them. So this is how those different struggles play out. And that's just a little bit. Okay. And I'm just giving you some little examples. There's some other little videos I've tacked on as well. one involving Jordan Peterson, kind of looking at Freud. I do suggest you look at those. And tomorrow, what we're going to look at is kind of Freud's defense mechanisms. Because what happens is there's going to be situations in life where someone's going to be upset. The id will not be satisfied, or the superego is going to be offended. And that'll be tomorrow. Those are what we call defense mechanisms, and these are kind of what kick in when someone is not happy. And then, yeah, and that'll wrap it up with Freud as far as kind of hitting the high points of them. Deuces.